Hey, good morning. This is Ed Clark, and this is the deal. We're trying to do something different today. We're doing a live uh, deal this morning. Um, Thanks for joining us. If you're here, we're right at 11 o'clock, and uh, we're still going to record the show like we normally do, and post it to the website. I know there's a little bit of delay, so I'm hoping that people are actually seeing it live right now. Sometimes these things are a little bit funky, so um, we're hoping that you're getting the live stream, and uh, joining me this morning is Dr. Nicole McFarlane from Fayetteville State University, and of course, Professor Val Atkinson from North Carolina Central University, formerly from North Carolina Central University. We also host a show called Connections on WFXC and WFXK in Eastern North Carolina. Val and Nicole, welcome to the deal.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Look, I don't even know where to start. We are still, I guess, in the waiting game. So we're trying to do this live on Saturday morning, November the 7th, because there still isn't officially a president-elect Joe Biden. Donald Trump doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. Some states seem to have a problem with counting. We can get into all that stuff. Real quick, Val, as I was preparing for the show, I had kind of lost sight of what's going on TV. Can you give me an update on where we are right now? Has anything changed at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning the 7th?
Well, at 11 o'clock, it is said that what will happen is one of the states that we've been looking at quite strongly, Pennsylvania will make some revelations at 11 o'clock, Nevada at 12. And hopefully between those two batches that are released, those batches that are released from those two states, it may be enough to push Joe Biden past the 270 mark, notwithstanding what happens in the other states that are still being contested. So who knows, this may be the day that we'll be able to say Joe Biden is president-elect of the United States of America. This may be the day. We've been waiting quite a while for it.
Well, we shall see. Dr. McFarlane, before we came on, we were just kind of chopping it up a little bit, and we were talking about the whole horse race mentality of this, and how the networks, they got the Steve Kornacki running around punching the board, and you go over to CNN, they got their guy doing it. You go over to Fox, they got their guy doing it and changing the numbers and doing all this stuff. So there's some theatrics to this, talk to me about what you've seen as a media.
I think even just this
observer.
Conversation in terms, all conversations, right now, they have been reduced to obviously the horse race, which has an element of gaming in it, game theory. It has a lot of element in terms of reward centers. I think a lot of people, I believe that some people who might have been missing their athletic sports fix probably is getting it fulfilled right now through following the election and the numbers. I think that's true because we may have been, we were denied the Sweet 16, other, sort of spreadsheet number score, following closely watching scores. A lot of that has been sort of taken out of the popular culture and contemporary moment because of the pandemic. But right now, I think that it has been fulfilled. I'm coming into contact with people who normally don't care anything about politics, but yet they can't take their minds off of the numbers in terms of the electoral votes. And what I think that speaks to is how dangerous our election system has become, our electing of public servants, candidates, politicians, that we have the sense of there's an entirely too long season for primaries in which television is very greatly involved in that. You obviously have like the fairness doctrine, and then you have the sort of back and forth, constant, right? So it's like one team against the other, or, maybe in this case, we're all Duke fans. Another time, some of us are Duke fans, others are, I don't know, Tar Heels. And so we have the same
No, no
mentality
real person is a Duke
in
fan.
terms,
I
I
want
think
to
it's,
remind you.
but I want to, really just bring it home in that we have really lost sight of what it needs to serve to have these people involved. So what I think is probably best, and what I've been doing a lot of, is focusing more on long form analysis of the issues rather than just watching Kornacki with, just sort of fumbling around with writing things on his finger with a screen digital thing. You can barely understand his handwriting because the numbers haven't come in first. Like, who wants to be first to crunch the most correct and most accurate numbers? It's like a lottery. It's watching a lottery returns. It's really or like the off track betting. I feel
Right.
like, and it's literally like a horse race. And I think there is some danger in that continuing to be what governs our politics.
And Val, that brings up something that we've talked about a lot, is that because of people's sort of detachment on generally all the time, and then you get to this 4-year thing of the presidential election, and we put all our eggs in this one basket, and so all our attention gets focused, and we think that's what politics is what we're watching now, when in fact politics is your dog catcher, your water and soul person, your town council person, your county commissioner, all these other seats, and judges and all this other stuff. Where's the failure here of how our system works? Why do people get so focused on what Nicole's been talking about, the horse race aspect of it? And I do like the long form discussion like we do when we're here on the deal, but people don't seem to like it quite so much. Talk to me as somebody who studies media and politics. Why have we arrived here, and can we put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, on this one?
Well, one of the battles that we have is trying to get the average John Doe and Mary Joe on the street to become as excited about politics as those who are running, those who are selling ads to talk about it, and those who are teaching about it and writing about it. The average Joe just doesn't have that level of interest. They are accustomed to show me the binary choices. I make my decision. I see immediate result, and let's move on to something else.
But I think
that's not the way politics works. People run for a long, long period of time, and you have to stay attached to what's going on. The other problem is you have some, and you and I talk about this sometimes, some strategists who are from the old school. And they are really not connecting with the folks who are out there right now that they need to talk with. And they are not communicating very well, and their message is falling on deaf ears. So when you put all that together, it's, you don't have a audience that is interested right now and stays interested 365 days a year.
And I think there's a simple response to that. And that's called campaign finance reform, right? So if this Trump presidency does not result in some sort of campaign finance reform, where whether or not the average Joe has that sort of attention span or deep existential curiosity about these sorts of questions of politics and policies that govern our lives and our outcomes, it's exactly what you're going to say. That's not how politics works. Those were your exact words. And what I say to that is that's because they designed it to not work for the average person. And yes, that's not how it's supposed to work, because they don't want it to work for the average person. Other countries have situations like France, the night before, or the 24 hours or 48 hours before the election, there's a moratorium on all kinds of political speech by the free press, but they value and they worship their free press. You look in in Norwegian country, I mean the Scandinavian countries like Norway and Sweden, and they have like a two-week period of time for elections, right? And that's because they have campaign finance reform and they limit the amount of money that can go into. I'm bothered by the fact, yes, of course, I gave money to Jamie Harrison, and I donated to Kamala Harris at one point. And I donated to Andrew Yang at one point, but I'm tired of being asked as a poor Black woman. I'm kidding, but as like I'm tired of being asked as a working class, for the most part. I'm a professor, but I'm a working class African American woman. I'm tired of being asked to pay for elections when the money should have to come out of it, and we can get a lot of things done. I agree with you. I'm just done with this horse race, and I think Trump is going to get to trot off as though he's some kind of statesman as far as the Democratic Party is going to go. They're going to not want to be punitive. Obviously, they're going to try to be reconciliatory. I hear the conversations of reconciliation towards Trump already. They're going to let him have his Mar-a-Lago Disney World YouTube channel, and everything's going to be right with the world, but it really won't be as long as we have these long, drawn-out 3-year elections. Trump elongated such that he continued campaigning even after Election Day on into Inauguration Day, and it never stopped. He campaigned when he was president-elect, and he campaigned as president. And that's why you had things like the Emoluments Clause being violated, and you had things like the Hatcher Act being violated. We have to pay attention. Follow the money. I'm done with this conversation in terms of that's just the way I feel right now. I'm so tired of this conversation about like mechanically, the Electoral College works perfectly. What we learned is the mechanic of it, the mechanism, the machine of elections, it works pretty well in the United States. What we did find out is that it works pretty well for some people and for a smaller amount of people, and it works well to obstruct the majority of people. It does do what it's supposed to do, and it's inherently anti-democratic.
Yeah, I hear you, Nicole.
I'm sorry, I got a little excited, but
no. I just want to remind folks you're watching the deal. We're actually live, doing a live today, because we're in the throes of this, whatever you want to call it. We're trying to put a name on it. Horse race, debacle, whatever, of trying to choose a president here in the United States. So that's Dr. Nicole McFarlane. That's Professor Val Atkinson. I'm Ed Clark. If you're watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, thanks for joining us. Generally, we record early on Saturday morning, and then it's played later on in the afternoon. So we'll still do that. We'll upload a version of this to the Deal website. I hear what both you guys are saying. One thing that I've been struck by is I spent time in Scranton, Pennsylvania last week, Val, and throughout all of central Pennsylvania, all the way up to the northeast Pennsylvania, when I stayed in Lackawanna County in Scranton, and I wrote a piece about it. And one of the things was my observation of driving through central Pennsylvania is that I saw so many Trump trucks, those trucks with the big flags on their back. I saw so many people with Make America Great Again hats. I stopped at the Sheets to get gas, and I got those looks because there's nobody Black in those towns in central Pennsylvania that are all red on all these maps we're seeing. And not until I got to Scranton did I see Biden-Harris stuff. And I walk in the restaurant to pick up my sandwich so I can go to the hotel. There's a picture of Joe Biden in there, but everybody sitting around the bar, maskless around the bar, had on Trump paraphernalia in Scranton. And so it tells me something about Americans and America as we're still trying to figure this thing out, is that 70-some million people still voted for Donald Trump. I need for you to explain to me, Val, why that is, even as, and we'll talk about coronavirus in a minute, but even as more people are dying, even as the economy sucks, even as the tax cuts went to the wealthiest people. Why are there 70 million people and all these people throughout central Pennsylvania and across America still voting for Donald Trump?
Well, to me, it is simply due to the fact that Donald Trump, his strategizers, his handlers, his advisors were able to convince a sizable portion of the American population that white culture was under attack. Their way of life was being threatened. Donald Trump was the person chosen to abate that threat. No one is totally in love with Donald Trump to the extent that they want him to be president for who he is. People support Donald Trump for what they think he can do for them or stop being done to them. We're talking about a cultural issue here that's not talked about very much, but people were convinced that if we continue down the road of what happened in 2008, 2012, and was threatening to happen in 2016, that white people in this country is going to lose their power, their place on their rung on the ladder, which they are at the top right now of everything. And they were concerned about that. Donald Trump showed that I don't care about protocol, about process, about politics or nothing. I'm your guy to go in and clean out the china shop. I'm the bull in the china shop. I can turn this stuff around and I don't care what they do to me. They can't do anything to me. I'm your guy. And he came down that escalator saying things that other politicians heretofore were afraid to say because they would turn off certain segments of the vote or whatever. He didn't care. He kept talking to his base and people started wondering, he's not expanding his tent. He doesn't have enough people. He's only polling at 40%. While we were thinking and talking about that, Donald Trump's handlers and strategists were going to the rural areas, to the exurbs, and they were registering people that not only didn't vote in 8 and 12, many of them had never voted before. So they were beyond the polls. Many pollsters told you they were looking at people who were likely voters. And if you've never voted before, you're not very much of a likely voter. So the polls said that Biden was going to win maybe 300, maybe landslide, maybe 400 electoral college votes. It turned out to be that here is the Saturday after the election, and we don't have a concession, nor do we have any major network that's bold enough to call the election for either candidate. That's how close it is.
Yeah. So Dr. McFarlane, I'm listening to Val, and he's talking about this angst among white voters. Again, the same angst I saw when I was driving through central Pennsylvania, where I literally went from one town where Mike Pence was there, the next town Eric Jr. was there, the next big town Don Jr. was there. And
guess what? Apparently it didn't work very much because Philadelphia came for that.
So
and
that's
so
what I want to talk to you about.
So did Wisconsin, Chicago, and where is it?
Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So
Milwaukee,
what I wanted to ask you about is precisely that. Is that Negroes rescue Joe Biden again? Is that it's going to turn out probably that that the black vote in those large urban areas is probably going to save Joe Biden?
I mean, that's almost a given, right? As long as Black people were allowed to vote, that they voted, in ways that other people greatly benefited from the Black vote, right? Black people supporting that, but the problem is that the dysfunction of elections, it's been severed from the idea of the vote, right? And so you have people that are still very much in their own tribes, the way Val mentioned the idea of their way, white people or people who call themselves white people, right? As James Baldwin would tell us, how they are afraid is their way of life will be taken away. What I would say is it's certainly, but even more profound in that, there's this pseudoscientific racist narrative that this hierarchical system, this Western system of traditions based on white, masculine, cis, straight, business owning, Christian, like if you want to just keep going down the line, right, of just like all these, like the more boxes you check off on that that chart, right, the more the society is supposed to work for you. And so I think that what we're really going to have to look at is that this sense of existential threat that white people are absolutely feeling, that they feel as though that they are being outnumbered, outbred, hence their interest in, remember the word breed is a verb, it's a verb and a noun, right? Breed means to have sex or to sex two items, to and to create offspring. And breed, a type of breed is like maybe that, that's a type of bloodline they're from, or they're particular type of people, particular race from a different breed, right? And so when you think about race and sex having to do with this notion of breed, we really have to think about everything that this right wing is doing in terms of like making sure that things like they're criminalizing because they think of it as an existential threat, and it's not just a way of life, but life itself. Questions about taking away a woman's right to choose the size of her own family, right? A person's right to IVF or in vitro fertilization, a family's right to expand the size of their family through that, limit the size of their family through birth control, safe, accessible, reliable birth control that is inexpensive, if not absolutely free. Like all these things that we can't stop talking about, right, has to do with why white people are feeling, or the narrative of a certain type of Trump voter of white people. Really at the underlying basis of it is an angst that they they're being outnumbered, and Black people, even when we want birth control, is still going to outnumber them. That's their fear. Because the sweet spot of once you have more than 4% of Black people in an all white situation, a white-topia, if you will, like an all white space, once it tips past 4%, white people start to get uncomfortable. You could start to, do.
You can feel it.
you can actually measure it by particular behavioral patterns.
Yeah, Val, we've had this conversation over and over again over the last almost 30 years that I've been knowing you about this fear of the diminishing white population in the United States, and that at some point you reach a tipping point and they're not in control. So they've gerrymandered their way into control. Let's look at it.
It's really a false narrative. I just want to say that.
Well, okay,
right? It's really a false narrative.
I get that, but the fact it plays out though in, let's look at just North Carolina where we are. That's easy enough, right? They've been able to maintain control over the legislature when we know they're the minority. They have complete control over the courts now, Val, and that's where I want to go to you. And what you were talking about, this control over women's bodies or whatever. They have complete control over the court, not just here in North Carolina, but then also at the appellate level, nationally, at the Supreme Court. Now they have total control, and we're sitting here saying that white people should not be in fear, but it plays out in them gaining complete control of all the institutions. So Val, my question to you, and I'll come back to you, Nicole, but my question to you is that this is the reality, though. We are not going to be able to move that court from a 6-3 because we didn't win enough seats in the Senate to be able to affect the Senate and do anything there. We don't have a big enough majority in the House. There's still too many state legislatures that are controlled by the Republican Party, which is a minority party. When do we get to a point where we can actually affect change to not have to worry about any of that? To me, it seems to me is that they're in a corner and could cower, but they're not. They're actually fighting all the time, and they're winning still. Even if Trump leaves, Joe Biden has a mess on his hands. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to express my angst at that there doesn't seem to be a way to get out of this in the short term. I think I'm going to be dead before we see something different. Am I wrong or am I overstating this?
You are absolutely right, Ed. And I don't wish to see an early demise on your part. But I think that there's a good chance that you nor I will see this thing turn around. Unfortunately, as you stated, they figured out how to put a linchpin in the appropriate place in the gear to have it to stop running. It doesn't smooth it out. They found out that the leader of the Senate is arguably the most powerful person in our government. And let me tell you some of the things why he's that powerful. Because he can stop nominations by the President of the United States from being on the Supreme Court. Case in point, Merrick Garland. He can push through people to be on the Supreme Court that normally would take an extended period of time. Barrett, Amy Coney Barrett. He can decide that a person brought to them, not just the president, but another person brought to them in a trial that's been indicted by the House called impeachment, can in fact go scot-free. Case in point, Donald Trump. This guy is sitting as the jurist, the top jurist. Some people think it's the John Roberts, who is the Chief Justice. It is not. It is the leader, because every sworn officer, cabinet members, some other people in the Constitution and in their job description, it talks about impeachment. So they can be impeached, but who determines whether they are guilty or not and removed from office? It is, in fact, going to be the Senate leader. He himself is impeachable if you can get to him, right?
So they actually have rooms in the Capitol building, right? They have those like hidden rooms where they can hide like behind walls and stuff like that. And really, and Mitch McConnell has the most because of his particular office. That's like when you become the Speaker of the House, you can like hide behind windows and go behind a pillar and wind up in like a secret safe, like almost like a safe room, but they're kind of like parlors all over the place. So he can hide literally for days on end in several different corridors of Capitol building. And I think that's important for us to note, because it was designed, again, it was designed that way. That's the function. That's the point. The Senate was developed for slave-holding states, right? That were sparsely populated by land-owning white men, those particular states, for them to maintain control over the levers of government. And again, so this is why the Senate itself exists. It goes back to white angst, this narrative that there is a particular group. And what I think has to happen is, if we're going to change anything, we're going to have to stop thinking about culture as like going to be our moral, the road to our moral end, or our moral visions are going to be achieved through culture. That's what I think the left has made a mistake with. I think the right is really smart about understanding that their road to their moral end has to do with actual politics, like actually putting people in office, actually putting people in the sheriff's office, actually putting people in the clerk of court and making the magistrates, and then up to the Supreme Court. We think that we're just gonna, I don't know, do a bunch of TikToks and make people join our side. I think we're wrong.
I'm glad you bring that up, because I've been thinking a lot about all this protest movement over George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so on and so forth, and all these extra woke folks that I was getting stuff from or whatever. I appreciate the spirit of protest. I think we need to be doing it or whatever, but it's completely, to me, disconnected from the political reality of, are you the mayor? Are you the police chief? Are you the sheriff?
Exactly.
Are you the clerk of court?
But see, the thing is, the Democrats haven't been able to thread that needle. When I talk about things like, really, what's really animating, right? Think about what the Proud Boys are about. It's a Western chauvinist, but really a typical like male chauvinist, right? Like stereotypical male chauvinist organization. Like that's their foundational linchpin, veneration of the housewife, for instance, things like that. If you look at how they're different from say like the Oath Keepers, which is very different, or just the Klan itself, or even I don't know, the Wolverines of some kind of Wolverines.
Yeah,
okay,
Michigan,
like all
Wolverines.
those different groups. Now, if you have all these different groups, you look at particularly the problem. I think a lot of Democrats have had a hard time explaining to young men how like having healthy children come into the world, strong, healthy children come into the world is the most important thing. And that's not just women's jobs, right? And so like that means they have some like say in like reproductive healthcare justice, right? For forced sterilization and eugenics programs, right? Lord knows what's happening to Black men who are incarcerated right now in terms of the sexual abuse. And, you have the Mississippi appendectomy, of course, for women of color, but I can only imagine the type of sexual and reproductive rights abuse that Black men are enduring in prisons. We're not even talking about. I bet if we started talking about it, we might be able to thread a needle, okay, about how these genocides are occurring. Right. And they see it as applying, some people, these certain powers see it as applying it to whom they deem fit without anyone having any choice. So they're tyrants. So on the one hand, it's not good enough for their people, but when it is good enough for their people, it's okay. So like Sarah Palin, for instance, when she realized she was pregnant with that that youngest child, Trig, she thought about it. She writes extensively about thinking about it for like 2 weeks. The fact that she could think about it and land in New York and be like, I could just go to the clinic if I want to, but then denies that, just that thought to be able to entertain that to every other woman in the world, right? And the fact that, of course, how many abortions has Trump been responsible for crying out loud? Like, let's be honest here, right? And so we look at that, like, who is abortion for, and who are they trying to make? If they want you to force you to have children, what is the point? What do they want for our children? Are they just trying to create like a greater, like another generation of a cheap, expendable
labor force
workforce?
Yeah, cheap labor force. I want to remind everybody, you're watching The Deal. We're live this morning with Val Atkinson and Dr. Nicole McFarlane. And you would, if you're joining us and you're watching, you're saying, well, what are they talking about? Why aren't they talking about how many electoral votes Biden has versus how many Trump has? What I'm going to say is the reason why we're not talking about that right at the moment is because I think it's a foregone conclusion.
Can I just say this?
Yeah,
Can I just say this one thing?
Wait a minute.
Trump, no, let me just say this. Trump, Trump, he actually pardoned 8 Black people. Obama and Biden pardoned 1,600 Black people. But somehow we could not make that conversation. We couldn't put that in people's faces and make them understand that.
Hold on, Nicole. We've got to finish one subject matter before we tributary into another.
I don't think it's a tributary. I think that's the point.
Whoa.
There's a convergence.
Yeah, it is a convergence. But hold on just a second, because I'm just getting an alert from CNN. And let me go over to CNN, and this is live. So let's see. I just got an alert from CNN. Biden wins is the headline here. Let me get it up here, and if you can see that, I'm live on the CNN website. It just came in. They're declaring Pennsylvania for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and And well, while we're at it, let's look at Fox. Just
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
just to be see what they say. Let's go to Fox News and see. This is live, folks. So they still say all eyes on battleground. Biden increases lead, claims he won by a lot. Results here. So you see that there's still a disconnect between what the folks over at Fox are saying and and what they're saying at CNN and I'm sure at other outlets or whatever. So Val, we're trying to, we're doing this live and the reason why I wanted to do it live was precisely because of that. But the other conversation that we were having, I think, does play into all of this. Is that the backstory for me is that it should not have been that close. There is no good reason to believe that Donald Trump could ever be perceived as being even a decent president. I think he has been and proven to be a failure as a president in the classic terms of what we consider to be a president. But I'm wondering if we're ascribing too much to America in general. And let me try to qualify this. We bought into that America is some great democracy that has great statesmen and that this is a great country and a great society. And that's probably playing into some of our problem here is that we got all these other issues that undergird all of this, that the Senate is about white men holding power and being able to affect everybody's life, and that small states like Montana and Idaho have too much sway over who becomes president and the horse race. I mean, all these issues that we've been covering ground on this morning, they actually play back into the real narrative that we often ignore is that America is a flawed place. Can you talk to me about that, Val, or that America is not perfect? It's not a perfect place. It was not birthed as a perfect institution from the beginning. And that if we continue to talk as if it is and have hope for this thing, that we're actually placing hope in the wrong thing.
Absolutely. I think we are fortunate to have the type of elections and the processes that we have that go along with it without having a real bad uptick in violence. I think we are fortunate that it hasn't happened because things really get off the rail from time to time. And people are involved not only financially, but they're involved emotionally. And once you get those kinds of things involved in something this serious and this directional, then anything can happen. The lid can blow off very easy. So I think we're fortunate in that respect that the lid has stayed on. Now, what has got to happen is, if I can go back to the earlier conversation we had, Mitch McConnell has done some things in the lower courts, in the appellate court, and in the Supreme Court that's going to take decades to undo, if anybody tries to undo it at all. And so one of the things that the Democrats have to do is determine how do you manage, how do you administer things, how do you run the executive branch of the government under these controls and constraints of a uber conservative judiciary and a House that you may have control over right now, and a Senate which you don't know. How do you make things happen? You brought up the whole notion of the legislatures in the various states are trending Republican. The governors, chief executive in various states are trending Republican. So how do we manage after we've won the presidency of the United States when everything around you is saying and looking like it's going to be an uphill battle? And I don't know if it's winnable without some really tough changes in our system. And I relish a conversation.
It's going to have to start with campaign finance reform. I'm going to keep saying that from now on. Like, I think there's no way any of this is even possible. And obviously I can't get into the weeds of the policy. I don't have the expertise, but from all things I know, in terms of what you're talking about directionally, like that's the only thing that can actually put some brake on it and just start to change the track and the direction. over time. And it's like trying to change what do you call a cruise liner in the middle of the ocean? Like it takes a long time because this boat's been chugging along for quite some time, and institutionalists know that. And what we're going to have to do is have educational programs, scholarships, fellowships that will train very young people. You know what? Let me just tell you a quick story. In late 80s, right? When I was in high school, it was that, right? And the National Communications Association, okay? They broke away from the Modern Language Association in the early 1900s, right? And so there was this big deal where they changed from the MLA style, this Modern Language Association, to like this APA style, this sort of like educational, new kind of social psychology kind of field. It was linguistics. It was totally different, right? So they broke apart. And one of the things that happened was in breaking apart, they completely changed how we even talk about politics. They talked about in this scenario, there's a debate team that I belonged to as a kid, a high school debate team. We went around the country, and I happened to be having a New York accent, really strong New York accent at the time. I could talk super fast. You probably picked up on that already. And so I really did well on debate teams. But do you know what they had us talk about in 1989? The subject matter? The subject matter itself was, should we abolish Social Security? Should we abolish Social Security and make it no longer part of the American retirement system? And we got introduced to that idea as high school students. We were Reagan babies, okay? And happening this, we kind of grew up kind of getting used to the idea that we weren't going to have Social Security. So we stopped worrying about it. We stopped thinking that it mattered. What we have to do is start doing the same way. We have to think the long game. As Democrats, we have to have fellowships. We start putting subjects into classrooms, into 10th grade, 9th grade, like have them debate both sides of it. And we had to learn how to argue both sides of it equally. Why against Social Security, for Social Security? We had to learn the whole history of it. We had to learn everything about it. And in that process, they changed our minds. They made us more likely to accept a world without Social Security, let alone healthcare. Yeah. I think that's the kind of things that we need to do. Yeah. And in that long story, when I'm telling you how these groups break up, they have different reasons. And when professional organizations, I think Black professionals, we're going to have to start rebooting up things like the national, the NBA, the National Bar Association and our medical associations. And we're really going to have to start stepping up and start getting into the K through 12, because right now, I'll be honest with you, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but when you're teaching a college classroom right now, you're kind of teaching 10th graders or maybe 9th graders. Yeah, that's the scary part. If you're watching us, most of you have probably already seen this news that CNN is reporting that Biden wins. Fox is still kind of on the iffy about it. Most of the other media outlets are saying the same thing. We're talking about a number of different things. And I want to make sure people understand this, is that you can talk about Joe Biden winning, but you have to talk about all the stuff that's underneath. It's the making the sausage part that we're talking about this morning, is that it's not so clean. It's not just a matter of a candidate emerges, leads a party, and becomes the leader of the free world by going out and espousing the best ideas. It doesn't work that way. There's a whole bunch of other things that are going on, the miseducation of kids, and people not being prepared for the modern world, our place in a global society where we make up 4% of the world's population, but we act like we are 99% of it. There's a whole bunch of issues that need to be discussed. And that's why I didn't want to have this discussion this morning just be about the horse race, because we knew inevitably, based on the numbers, that Biden was going to be the winner. There's no ambiguity about that. I don't think there was any ambiguity about that when we started the discussion. But Val, I'm listening to Nicole, I'm listening to you, I'm listening to myself ramble, because I am still
Trump may be gone on January the 20th, but I'm still disconcerted and out of sync because of all the other stuff we've been talking about. We will have to deal with a hostile court. We will have to deal with an election system that is driven by money. Like Nicole said, I sent Jamie Harrison money. I sent a lot of black candidates in North Carolina money. It didn't have much of an effect. We are awash in money, in politics. A lot of this is about corporate interest in the end. That again is the only hope for this thing to crumble completely and there be something else. And the history books will deal with it later on because I'm going to be dead. I don't want to be all that pessimistic, but I don't know what else to say about it, Val.
Well, one of the things that you're going to have to do if you don't change, if you don't have a constitutional convention to change everything, is you've got to get control of the Supreme Court, because you got something called Citizens United that allowed all of this money to flow from all different places, dark money and all this other stuff. And now you got a 6-3 Supreme Court. So whatever you do down at the lower levels, if it ever gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to say, we're going to honor Citizens United. And so that's why Mitch was so successful at getting that backstop, I like to call it, getting the backstop set up, that anything you do down here, ultimately it'll steam up and it's got to go to those 6 guys to make the final decision. So when we strategize, we've got to do holistic strategizing. And if we're just doing gears 4, 5, and 6 and letting gear 1 stay where it is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do down at 4, 5, 6, 7 gears. Gear number 1 says status quo, next subject. Status quo, next subject.
Don't look over here. Pay attention to the man over there.
We've got to do something.
Do you think there's an issue?
Got to do something about it.
Do you think there's a possibility? Do you think, I'm just going to pose a question. Do you think there's a possibility that Biden has won the election, but Trump will steal it? I was saying before that Biden would definitely win and Trump would definitely steal it. And I still think that we have to be mindful of the fact that Trump could steal it, because you still have are they called faithless electors now? There's another name for them.
Yeah.
Not faithless electors.
It's faithless electors.
There's another one. There's another one that's even more another kind where they could. It's not even like faithful electors or faithless electors. There's another sort of it. I don't know. Maybe someone Google it. But I think that's so scary right now. Is that I think that we are really.
Well, let me introduce something to you. Chalafeo versus Washington was a Supreme Court case recently that happened after 2016, where you had an elector to vote for Colin Powell instead of for Donald Trump as he was supposed to. So
that happened in 2016?
Right.
Oh.
Instead of Donald Trump, I'm sorry. Well, I don't know who else said, but he voted for Colin Powell instead of Donald Trump. Colin Powell wasn't even on the ballot anywhere. So the state of Washington sued Cal Fowler and fined him $1,000. So he took the case to court, and his argument was let me finish. His argument was that electors should be able to vote for whomever they want once they get to that point. And Washington's case was that no, you have to vote as we tell you to vote. Once you become an elector, you take a vow to vote as we tell you. So the Supreme Court agreed with the state of Washington. So that is court case now, that electors don't have the right to change their vote or do whatever. They must vote as the state instructed them to vote.
Right, but what if the state legislatures go rogue? That's what I'm hearing.
Like,
do you think it's a possibility?
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that too, Nicole. And then one of the things that I think will make that less possible is within the last, I would say, 24 hours, you have seen some Republicans distance themselves from this notion of continuing to fight to the end. In the end, and this is back to what I was saying before, is that this system runs on some sort of order. And the order is, will I affect the stock market and corporate interest and all those kind of things? Nobody is interested at the big pharmaceutical companies. Nobody's interested at GM and Ford and Chrysler. Nobody's interested at any of the big Wall Street firms in this being a stolen election and there being violence in the
That's
street.
what I'm hoping. I believe that.
Because they are more interested in their stock price, and we got to sell shit to people. That they armed insurrection in the street is not something that any of the corporate people are interested in. They are interested in maintaining the order, and whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump in the White House, they can maintain order because state legislatures and courts are on their side. And I think that's how I would frame it, that I'm less afraid about that. What I'm afraid about is something you talked about earlier, those Proud Boys and Wolverines and the idiot class, the same people that Hillary Clinton called deplorables and she was absolutely right about. Those are the people that I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about the institutions, because they run on money and they run on stability, and they run on poor people or people that have just enough money to buy the shit they want to sell. I mean, does that make sense?
Makes
Nicole?
sense, but it then makes me question, then why would Mark Rubio co-sign that convoy of Trump supporters?
Well, he needed to at the time, right? You know, that it's situational too. Think about this: if you're Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, you're not up for election now, but you're up for election the next time.
He had to then, but he couldn't say something. He couldn't say like, well, that was. But he said instead, like, we do that all the time. We like that's okay.
He's hedging though, right? He's hedging because he can't afford to lose anybody who supported Trump. Because if you look at the numbers, everything always turns out to be close to damn 50-50. Unless you're in the reddest of red places where it's always red. Somebody who's running for a statewide office or a federal office where you, like the Senate, where you got to get everybody to vote for you.
And I think you're right, because I think what's probably what we're going to look at as the transition goes forward, that the Biden team is probably going to have a lot of people from the Obama administration who are highly competent, who know how to work government. Now, I know a lot of things that they will expect to have inherited probably will have been burnt to the ground or just thrown out or buried or just hidden or erased, because I think there's going to be a lot of covering up out of the Trump administration for what they've done when they handed over. And I think maybe Trump might not be will not be very just competent at staying in government. Do you think there's even a possibility that he might just quit ahead of time, be like, I don't want it anymore?
I think he's already quit.
I don't even want to go to the inauguration. Like, you almost think that he would do that, just as much. I guess what I'm saying is, like, to me, every possibility, right, is a possibility. And so I'm kind of throwing all these things, these scenarios out there, right? Because to me, that's what we have descended into because of the horse race. Every possibility, every single outcome, the bookies have made bets on these outcomes. I'm not just talking like out of the ethers. There are people really taking bets on these actual scenarios and these outcomes. So it's not the odds and the probabilities are actually there. And so I guess I'm thinking, how we get out of this part of it? And even though we're gonna have a lot of dangerous people, about 50% of them that we have to
worry about. You are correct about that, and like I said, that's my angst. I'm worried about those idiots who can't figure stuff out. But I do want to switch gears though, and we shouldn't forget this. We have a female vice president, it appears, and she's another colored person. In the same vein as Barack Obama. You know you're going to hear this. Now, just play this out with me. Barack still got a lot of this. Well, he's not quite black. And then, so we've heard that same stuff with Kamala already. Um,
It's different.
well, that's what I'm going to ask you. Is it going to be different this time? Because as the vice presidential, or as the vice president, with a very old man as president, the oldest man as president, she would be assuming the mantle as leader of the party if anything happened to him, God forbid, or he decides not to run again. She would be the heir apparent, Val. A colored woman, she got two things. A colored woman is the leader of the Democrats. Now, it was hard enough to imagine a Negro man as leader of the Democrats in Obama. What is it going to be like to be for Kamala the next 4 years, sitting on the bench, maybe coming in the game to run against Marco Rubio or whoever is going to show up for the Republicans 4 years from now? Talk to me about Kamala Harris real quick.
Well, other than going to funerals like vice presidents normally do, I think she's very smart. She's very smart, and she knows that if she has 4 years to get herself in a position to run for the presidency. She can't have an 8-year plan. She's got to have a 4-year plan because, as you said, about his age, Biden's age, and a lot of other things that could happen. So she start working on that now. Everything she does is going to be based on her 4-year plan. She's got to keep the Black vote energized, the vote of color energized. She got to make sure she's doing those kinds of things that women need her to do to keep them energized. And she has got to, without a doubt, talk about expanding the party. The expansion is the key. That's what she does for the next 4 years. And anything else that Joe Biden or the party needs or wants her to do. She's got a relatively easy job.
Yeah, she has an easy job for right now, but I'm just thinking about in terms of, I think, we're in some different territory here. I just got my Fox alert. My Fox alert is now saying that Joe Biden has defeated Trump to become the 46th president. So in that case, I'll throw one out here for you again. If Fox News is saying it, have we put to rest a lot of our fears about some of the stuff we were talking about in the last little segment here?
No, because Donald Trump has not conceded, and I don't think his personality will allow him to do so.
Wait, I got something for you. Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris 2024. Imagine that. Okay, let me say something why Kamala Harris is different. Kamala Harris is different from Barack Obama, not just because she's a woman, but also because she doesn't have the same anchor to the Black community that Barack Obama had and Michelle Obama. I think there's a difference in terms of its the connection that the Black community. Time will tell, however, but I think so far there's something different in terms of like the fact that she doesn't have a foundational Black, African American, Black American descendant from slaves, Black American spouse. I think that makes a difference in terms of how to what extent and how deeply the Black American community, Black American voters will embrace her going forward. And I think that that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. But you have to think about Nikki Haley and Kamala Harris. I think would be really interesting as two Asian women running for both tickets in the
trying to get the Indian vote.
Wouldn't that be fascinating? I mean, it sounds almost like speculative fiction. But who would have thought we'd have had a Black president and then a reality television president on the heels of each other?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan seemed like speculative fiction even. So, yeah. I mean, who can tell?
Yeah,
but they're both highly qualified.
Who can tell at this point? I just know that we've been talking for the last hour, and it's been a fascinating hour. I wanted to do this live because I had anticipated that there would be some big news during this hour. I was hoping there would be, and there is. And like I said, even Fox News and some of the other outlets that have been very loath to announce Joe Biden as the winner are now saying it, that there's no way possible, because even Nevada has said that Joe Biden won. So if you take Nevada and Arizona and take Pennsylvania off the table, Joe Biden still wins. There's no way around it, and we kind of knew that. The only thing that's still remaining to be determined is who's going to control the Senate. There's a very slim to no chance that Cal Cunningham still has some votes here in North Carolina. North Carolina won't announce until the 12th what the final outcome is, but there are still 100 and some odd thousand ballots that need to be gone through. In the last little thing I want to talk about here, there was an opportunity, and Cal Cunningham could have moonwalked into the Senate, Val. And I talked to some of my Republican friends. I do have a few, and they said they went into the ballot box and in a couple cases did not vote for Donald Trump, but they didn't vote for Biden either. But they did vote for Tom Tillis, not because they wanted to, but because Tom Tillis and that crowd was able to use the indiscretion of Cal Cunningham to affect, and it may have affected 50,000 people. That's all you needed to affect, right? And that's the way it looks like what it did. It worked. And now we have Tom Tillis probably going back to the Senate, and the best that the Democrats could do is 50-50 if they win the 2 seats in Georgia. And let me talk to you about the likelihood of that, Val. We know that our girl Stacey Abrams has done a very able job in Georgia, because it looks like Biden's also going to hold on to Georgia. Is it possible that you could have 2 Democratic senators from the state of Georgia, because there's going to be runoffs in both of those races,
Absolutely.
and then there may be some hope here?
Absolutely, there could be. However, the part that scares me or gives me concern is the voting record or the history of voting of African Americans in runoff elections, any kind of election that you got to come back. We used to call them second primaries here in North Carolina, that really did not do well, and we lost every time. I'm concerned about that. I'm not writing it off at all. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to figure out what can I do to help out in Georgia to get more African Americans out to the poll, because I know I'm perceiving that's where the weak point is.
I think they are taking.
It's going to be turnout.
Yeah,
it's going to be turnout, because we had great turnout in the general election, as can be witnessed by what happened here. I just want to make sure there's no laxing down now, saying, okay, we got Biden in, okay, I'm going to relax. I don't want that to happen. This is critically important. So whatever I can figure to do by my talking or my writing or my money or whatever, I am going to do to make sure that the African Americans in Georgia come out with the same fervor for these senatorial candidates as they did for the presidential one.
Yeah, that is going to be critically important. Well, we've done our hour here. I'm pretty sure everybody else is glued to their TV watching. I mean, I guess it is historic, right? Because you do have a woman as vice president. That's historic.
That's a black woman.
And a black woman at that. You also have a one-term president, which is not very typical. It's not happened that many times. And where an incumbent, has lost. You also haven't had a situation where you're in the middle of a pandemic either, and we didn't talk about that much, but we hit increasingly more alarming numbers every day in America. More people are dying, and we have to talk about that. I expect next week, Val, as we and Nicole, as we process through what this means, all the court cases that'll probably go on with the president, who won't give up so easily. Um, we still need to talk about the pandemic. So next week, when folks come back to the deal, I'd like to bring back in one of our medical experts to try to get us caught up to date. I'm sure that we'll have some court cases going on. So we'll reach out to our legal expert, Herb Joyner, and have him try to give us some perspective on what those court cases look like. In the meantime, Dr. Nicole McFarlane, tell me something good. What do we have to look forward to? What is there anything good out of what happened here?
Well, we got to see that. I want to echo what Val said. We should be grateful for at least the fact that the mechanics, the levers of a vote of the election process, the electing and votes and casting ballots, that the vote still does work in that regard. What we have to do is make it work. And we can look forward to having a chance to make it work at the level of real representative democracy for everybody, making sure that everyone that's extended and more people can have it. So
I hear you. And Val Atkinson, what's good about all of this that we've been talking about this morning?
The prospect of turning the Justice Department back over to the rule of law. That is so important and so central in everything we do. And to get someone in there, and I haven't even started giving any thought who that should be, but get someone in there that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party believes would be a good attorney general, and start taking a look at these things and treat crimes as crimes and pranks as pranks, if there's any such thing. But be fair. That's what I want. I look forward to that. I think all of America can now.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback off of you, Val, on that attorney general thing. I would like Stacey Abrams. She's a very able attorney, and a lot of people don't understand that about her. I'd like a place for Stacey Abrams in whatever administration there is, or maybe it's better for her to be out pounding the pavement and getting people to vote. My good thing out of this, folks, is that the nightmare of Donald Trump on a daily basis being a danger to folks is probably a couple of months away, but there is an end in sight. What I do want to encourage people to do, and I've been doing this for all the time that I've been involved in the media. I know Val's been doing it. Nicole has joined our crew and encouraging people to do it. Be more serious about voting, who your leaders are, paying attention to other things other than popular culture. I understand the desire to, not want to be immersed in politics all the time because it is nasty, it is complicated sometimes. However, your life depends on having leaders who are working in your interest. You can't turn this over to the moneyed interest. We have been fighting the whole time that this has been a country to try to wrest some of that power away. Slavery would not have gone on so long had there not been any money involved in it, right? The civil rights movement would not have been such a hard thing to do had white people not wanted cheap black labor in the South that they didn't want to treat as human beings. We are now at a point where we want to control people's wombs, as Nicole talked about. The Supreme Court, they use abortion as a wedge issue. That is not really the thing they want to control. They want to control you. They want to control where you live, how much money you make, all kind of things in their interest. The billionaires have made more money during the pandemic than they've made 300 and some odd $billion just during the pandemic itself. So, folks, take this serious. I don't want to be preachy, but I am going to be preachy. We do the deal in connections, and I know Nicole writes and Val writes and I write because we feel that it's important for people to be full participants in their destiny. You don't have to give this to somebody else. That you do have an opportunity to have influence. I'm tired of getting stuff from people saying that everybody's the same, ergo I do not vote. or ergo I don't care, or ergo I'm only concerned about what's on Housewives this week. That I can't get into what's happening, in the political realm. I am glad that people are making the announcement that Joe Biden is president. It is not a panacea. Joe Biden was not my first choice. I don't care as long as it's not Donald Trump. How about that? So if we come back next Saturday, and we may even do a live during the week like we did last week. So look out for something. We may be here on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. You've been watching The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Nicole McFarlane, professor at Fayetteville State University. That's Val Atkinson, former professor at North Carolina Central University. I'm Ed Clark. We'll see you next Saturday. Thanks a lot for joining us.